Hi, I'm Tim, and welcome back to Versus. Today, we have ourselves a pair of dreadnoughts. A big bore battle between Patek Philippe and Richard Mille. Automatic annual calendar flyback chronographs from the top of the market. Versus starts now. Richard Mille, formerly RM011-FM, launched its first watch in 2001. After a succession of shock-resistant tourbillon, split-second, and high-mech debut models, the need for sales volumes and serial production pieces became apparent. By mid-decade, RM began to launch models like the 2007 RM11 to maintain volumes and provide a point of entry south of $500,000. The example featured today exemplifies all elements responsible for elevating the one-time point-of-entry RM11 to near standard bearer status for the Richard Mille brand. It's important to note that in the modern era, Vacheron Constantin and Franck Muller were responsible for resuscitating the early 20th century tonneau case form. That said, Richard Mille now owns this thing, stealing all the fire of the early entries in the class. It looks like a Vacheron designed by an android. It is the signature of the brand, and though this might be nominally an entry-level complication for Richard Mille, the sandwich-like construction, the arc of the caseback that traces the wrist, and the three-dimensional prism-like presence of an RM11 on the wrist deliver 150% of the aesthetic expectation of an RM owner. It has look, character, and composition that defy expectations. While it has all of the personality you hope and more, it's also a lot easier to wear. The timepiece has a cambered caseback like many Franck Muller tonneaus, such that it traces and anchors the arc of the wrist to the case, so it sits and holds the wrist the way a Ferrari Formula One car holds the track. The timepiece is remarkable in its industrial execution. Elements of the case construction, such as the titanium flanks in a brushed satin and the sandwich top and caseback in white gold, are expressed, even exaggerated, to make the watch look less an artisanal effort and more a feat of engineering. And let me tell you, in person, it works. The spline-style screws are present and correct, not just on both sides of the watch, but even fixing the movement. You will note that each of these screws, calculated to impress the owner and frustrate amateur watchmaking, is just one of many design signatures, from the shouldered crown to the extended chronograph actuators designed in the image of automotive gas pedals to the arc of the tonneau. This watch is all about iconic imagery in the macro and micro elements. It's important to note that the strap is super flat in juxtaposition to the thickness of the case. The strap could be featured on a piège. Seamless and bonded, it's a supple calfskin, wears easily on the wrist. The clasp, with a unique forceful deployant and closure system based on a leaf spring, has no locking mechanism, but it closes and remains closed forcefully, and once again, the spline screws present and correct, reflecting the fact that Richard Mille, also an art house, self-consciously designs even detail components. RM's icon is the case. I get it, we know. But the dial is a close second. Don't undersell the role that layers play here. There's an outer cambered sapphire, expensive to make, true, but then a second one that hides, holding all of the calibrations of the annual calendar system, the branding, the registers of the chronograph, and the hours of the day. The layers of sapphire serve as an appetizer, if you will, for the fully finished, skeletonized, and exposed dial side of the RM011 caliber. Very much a machine brought from the inside out. It has outsized personality on the wrist of the wearer. Once again, a design icon of the brand, second only to the tonneau. The transparency and depth of this dial set the standard for the technical class of chronographs. There is a composite ring flanking the dial, featuring all of the luminescent indices as well as a stealth and easily missed tachymeter scale. This is a sports chronograph after all. Let's get this out of the way. Richard Mille uses not just a customer caliber, but customer components. The annual calendar flyback chronograph comes from Dubois de Praz. The base movement is provided by Vaucher Manufacture, part of the Parmigiani family of companies. That said, The look, the aesthetic, and the materials, the finishing, and the character are all Richard Mille. All of the bridges and plates are of titanium. The white gold variable inertia weights on the winding mass allow you to change the polar moment and thus the winding efficiency of the rotor based on your personal level of activity. The winding mass outboard is tungsten carbide. All of the bridges are skeletonized, so though it is an automatic chronograph, nevertheless you can see more of the movement in the Richard Mille than the similarly specified Patek Philippe, which cloaks most components under solid rotor and bridges. The electro-spark eroded skeletonized bridge components are rough-hewn, and they are self-consciously left in a semi-unfinished state, even as they are DLC coated to give them a more industrial, dark, and brooding aesthetic. It feels like I've lifted the hood of a Formula One car. You will note the balance on this late production model is free-sprung, an important change when the movement changed from the RM11 to the RMAC1. The free-sprung balance makes the watch tougher. Twin mainspring barrels provide even torque release that, at the limit, may make the RM potentially more accurate than the Patek. The timepiece is a customer caliber, cobbled together, but not with indifference and not without style. Consider this hamburger to be gourmet. Since the first Patek Philippe 5960P dropped at Basel World 2006, the model has been Patek Philippe's RM11. The 5960 has been produced in countless dial, case, strap, bracelet, and even custom editions, to say nothing of its 5905 second cousin. The steel 5960 1A bout at Basel 2014, and the black dial steel combo seen here was built in a brief window from spring to fall of 2017. It's the collector's choice. Patek's 5960 case has proven almost as enduring as RM's tonneau. The form has graced so many wrists across so many variants that it's easy to forget how special it feels in person. It's fluid, it's sensuous, it's compact, and it makes the most of its few strong compound curves. There's a femininity about this case design that contrasts strongly with the brute masculine force of the RM tonneau. It is graceful and fluid, almost as though it were a piece of molten metal drawn by gravity. It seems almost frozen in place from a liquid state. The timepiece is all about pairing its visual mass, and thus it has a thin case band. Unlike the massive arc of the RM tonneau case, this one is minimized and tapered. That goes double for the concave bezel, which is designed to shrink the watch visually and does so in the grand tradition of past Patek Philippe's that have used this styling signature. The pump pushers recall history, and the bracelet is, for the most part, distinctive of this model, though you could perhaps cite references. It's so different from the bracelets seen on other Patek Philippe sports watches, such as the Nautilus and the Aquanaut, that it really needs to be placed into its own category, somewhere between a sports watch bracelet and a dress watch unit. The preponderance of small links means it sits silken on the wrist, incredibly comfortable. It never pinches skin, pulls hair, or traps heat. It's matched with a deployant clasp that is perhaps more basic than that of the Richard Mille, but just as secure, if not more so when closed, thanks to the clamshell locking mechanism. Though the watch is thinner than the Richard Mille, and that by several millimeters, nevertheless, when you include the solid end links, it's almost exactly the same span lug to lug, so in terms of fit, it's almost a wash. The signature style statement of the 5960 across all models is the dial. The dial will be the basis on which historians of the industry mark Patek's 5960 as a defining model of the Terry Stern era at Patek. It's important to recognize how much has changed since the original dress-oriented 5960s. They had more muted leaf-style hands. They were more dominated by the mono counter with the hours and minutes at 6 o'clock. Their minutes and seconds tracks outboard were minimalist, almost as though they were Calatrava calibrations transposed onto a dress watch. With the 5961A, the other features of the dial become more substantial, more insistent, and better able to balance balance the visual mass and punch of that monocounter, the oversized faceted metal apertures in white gold for the calendar, the larger sports-style hands at center, the exaggerated indices, and the stepped metallic minute and seconds track outboard make this watch look, for all intents and purposes, like a straight cross of the original 5960 with a 1960s Rolex Daytona Singer exotic dial best known as the Paul Newman. All of which misses the point, which is the finish of the Patek caliber CH-28520. The closer you get to this movement, the more interesting it becomes, and that is simply the polar opposite of the phenomenon experienced with the Richard Mille. Rather than a machine betraying no evidence of humanity, the movement of the Patek Philippe betrays more evidence of the human hand as you draw nearer and closer and larger through what I hope is at least a 10-power loop. Patek Philippe 5960 1A advantages. More beautifully built inside, it has none of the harshness verging on crudity of RM's industrial interior finish. Rarity. Especially in this black dial variant, the steel 5960 is a closed book. RM's 11 series lives on as the visually similar RM011-03. The pedigree that comes with a true manufacturer product, Patek is building almost all of this watch in-house. Size and discretion. You wouldn't drive a race car on the road, and the RM's boisterous style will render it a situational watch for many. A bracelet is standard. The RM bracelet is an after-sales option that will run you roughly the price of this Patek and then some. Not this Patek bracelet, the whole watch. Legibility. We've reached the point where 50% of the luxury watches in this test seem hostile to the notion of actually reading time. And it's not just the time of day. Patek's annual calendar interface requires only one glance and zero guessing. Richard Mille RM011 Felipe Massa advantages. The ultimate status symbol of our age. Nothing, not Rolex, not this Patek, not even a Nautilus, packs the at-a-glance alpha cred of an RM-tonneau case. The intriguing use of titanium caliber components, shock resistance measures, and water resistance that's at least marginally swimmable, unlike the Patek. Technophiles will love the truth-informed notion of keeping the mechanical components raw. Layered dial displays will enchant artistic minds. Ergonomics by MC Escher. It looks like a lion, it wears like a lambskin. Despite size and bulk, it's more comfortable than the already cush Patek. Want old school Swiss? RM is the foremost modern practitioner of établissage, or the assembly of fine parts under a single brand name. Moreover, RM makes no real effort to disguise this or apologize, and that is downright refreshing. Living up to a legend is near impossible. I met Kiss and nobody breathed fire. I wore the Patek Philippe Grandmaster chime, and no chorus of angels serenaded me. I strapped on the RM011 Felipe Massa, and I absolutely understood what inspires grown men to get emotional over the so-called racing machine for the wrist. I'm a car guy and a watch guy, so I get it. Off-screen, though, I race bicycles, not cars, and certainly not watches. The subtle graces of the steel 5960 are designed to arrest the attention of the owner alone. It makes my heart race, and not even Felipe Massa can outlap that rival.